And with that, with no objection, I recognize the ranking member for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank everyone for being here. It's really nice to have the continuity from where we were a year ago and to continue on. Let me first begin with Mr. Merriman. Mr. Merriman, Aztec, as I understand it, received a waiver from the FCC, did they not?
We received a limited data waiver for our road miles and road crossings, not without a great deal of cost. Initially, the data that the FCC had entered said that there were 2,429 miles of road on the North Slope. Anybody who's been up there would know that it's just not true. In fixing that, we had to buy mapping software that they would accept. We had to use outside consultants to run the mapping software. And what we determined was that, in fact, many of what they considered to be roads were really caribou trails, old cat trails from the 1950s, right after World War II, when the U.S. said you need to go out there and survey. That's just scarred tundra now. There's the actual number is closer to 636 miles.
Now, one of the things that we've become very much aware of, and you've all mentioned it, it's the QRA, which is this regression analysis model that somehow all of you have to fit into. And I believe as a result of that, I have an order of April 25, 2012, where everyone sort of is listed in the back, and there's a reference to CAPEX and OPEX in there. And just so that we all agree, CAPEX are your capital expenditures and OPEX are your operational expenditures. No, everyone agrees with that? And capital expenditures are the construction, which was one of the elements that you mentioned, for example. And each one of you is in here. When you've asked for your waiver, you, I assumed, asked that the QRA determination on your particular situation would be reviewed and that the FCC would reevaluate what they determined would be your CAPEX and your OPEX. Would that be a correct statement? That
would be a correct statement. In 2012, we identified an abundance of erroneous either data inputs or assumptions in assigning either the OPEX or the CAPEX coefficients that we felt were out of line with reality. But they only acted upon road miles and road crossings, and we stipulated that we would follow up on the other issues, tribal climate and the negative Alaska capital expense.
Now, let me shift now to Mr. He. You've hit the press quite a bit in Hawaii.
So I understand.
Yes, you have. It's even made its way here. And you haven't heard about it? No, except for Don Young, but that's okay. Mr. He, one of the concerns that has been raised in the order that the FCC issued when they denied your waiver is they speak to the concept of affiliates. And I received from you, and I'm going to ask Mr. Young to make it part of the record.
Without objection.
And the reason why I'm raising it is because a lot was made about the affiliates, and the assumption that many of us make is that no one knew about these, or it was never audited, or you never made it public. Would that be a correct statement?
Yes, the assumption is that. However, we have been operating this way with affiliates since the very beginning.
And what's the very beginning for you?
The very beginning was we began to provide service in the early 1990s.
And what I have before it is a chart that you provided to me, and then there's yellows and there's blues and there's some other colors, but blues and yellows seems to dominate. What do they represent?
Those are reports and audits that are performed either by agencies. The two agencies represented by those colors are RUS and the FCC. And as you can tell, each year we are audited and or report back to them all of our results, and which includes the interactions with the affiliates.
My time for this round is up, so I will yield, but I'd ask the chair if he could make that part of our record. One of the statements you made in your written statement to us was that the FCC ignored basically Sandwich Isles compliance with the only applicable ownership rules which limit foreign ownership and define affiliates as having common ownership. Now, what are these rules? The implication from your statement is that, you know, you did affiliates because that's what you're required to do. So can you explain that statement?
Yes. The very nature of an affiliate means that there is a common ownership. In today's world, if you look at any regulated utility, and it doesn't have to be a rural company, all regulated utilities operate with affiliates. You don't see the affiliate because it operates under the bigger name. But telephone companies all have affiliates. The only rules for affiliates as far as ownership, which they criticize me on in the denial of the waiver, is a limitation on foreign ownership and the fact that it must be closely held to be called an affiliate. So we comply with it.
When you say it must be closely held to be an affiliate, is there something in particular that you're saying that that's part of the FCC rules and regs that says that it must be closely held to be an affiliate?
It actually is a accounting rule, because what happens is closely held companies have to meet a higher standard of intercompany transactions, which the FCC has rules about and which we have always met from the very beginning. So the ownership of the affiliate should not be the issue. It should be, are the transactions within the rules? And the 13-page denial of our waiver, where they severely criticize the way I operate. The reality is, not once do they say I was in violation of any rule, because we're not. So they're using innuendo to shift the burden of the not getting the waiver to me. The most telling fact is that in this regression analysis, where you have a CapEx and an OpEx, all of the cuts, 37% of our total loop cost was cut in the regression analysis alone. It all came from capital expenditures. Not $1 came out of operating expenditures. Yet, they deny my waiver based on innuendo about how I operate. If I wiped out my operations, all of my soft costs, I still would have 70% of my costs in capital expenditures. And getting back to the member's question about what can be done, what should be done is exactly what legislators, when you pass new laws, is grandfather. They came in here, they passed this new rule, and we had all these obligations to meet. And they made the rules so that we cannot meet our obligations. When you pass new laws, what was legal before the new law stands. In this case, what was correct and legal under the old rules, we are now deemed to be guilty of doing something wrong, just because they decided to do this one-size-fits-all.
Mr. Heath, the last hearing, both the chair as well as myself and others asked the question because we all know that what happens, all of you have RUS loans. what happens with this change and if you all default. And the representation made to us was that RUS and the FCC said they would be working with RUS to make sure that none of that would happen. In essence, that's what they're saying. So starting with you, and if you can move back to those who may have been having these kinds of discussions, do you feel that the FCC and RUS have been working to ensure that we don't have mass bankruptcies? Because if that's going to leave it back on us at that point, the taxpayer is going to end up paying. So how has your experience been? I'm sure each one of you have gone in to talk about what happens with your loans.
My experience in going through this waiver process is that the FCC wants RUS to renegotiate their loans. And when I meet with RUS, they want the FCC to recognize that this is a prior obligation and it should be fully supported. So we were caught in the middle. Neither agency was ready to say, this is how we're going to solve going forward. I met with RUS a week ago. They told us verbally that they were looking at helping us renegotiate the loans, the existing loans. They sent me a letter that said they won't do it. So I guess we're going to go look at the bankruptcy courts and have them figure out how to get these two agencies to do what should be done.
We currently do not have any RUS debt, but we're in the process of trying to take out a loan to connect to the fiber. And if, because of bureaucratic fiat, we miss this opportunity, that's my legacy, and it's not one that I choose to live. It's criminal if we can't, because of erroneous data and bad assumptions, we're not able to borrow in time to connect to that fiber.
Mr. La Paz, have you had any experience?
No, I haven't, but Mr. Strinjaro will have any.
Yes, we do. We do have current loans right now with the, Mr. Chairman, if you allow me to talk again, Godfrey Jotty. We do have loans around $6 million right now with RUS, and we've been trying to see if we can renegotiate that also. I guess there is wording in that they can do that, but actually there's some difficulties. The difficulties at RUS saying that we cannot refinance our loans, especially with the SUDA provisions. SUDA is there, hardly anybody uses it, but we cannot even try to get that done.
Just so I'm clear, are you talking about SUDA?
Yes.
Okay.
Substantially
Just
underserved
travel areas. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Those are some of the, those have 2% loan rates, and we'd sure love to use that if we could, especially under refinancing our loans, but also going after more loans, because we do need to try to meet the obligations the FCC has set forth with the 4 down and 1 up portion to get our broadband up to the higher speeds. When we first built our network, it was back in 2001, so we're using about 1999 era technology, and it's 2013 now, so we like to upgrade a lot of our equipment and be able to meet the higher data rates that the FCC has established that we need to have.
Thank you. We've exceeded our time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bennett.
One of the issues is the geography or the climate, as Mr. Merriman pointed out. And we all know Hawaii's situation is the linking of all of our islands together, which I would assume everyone would agree would have a cost factor associated with it. The other question, though, is whether anyone else can step forward and provide these services. That's part of the decision, the order, which was written against Sandwich Isles, which was that, others have said that they can step forward and provide these services. All of you, Julie, if you have an opinion on down, do you feel that there are other entities out there who are willing to come in and provide these services to these communities?
Well, I'd like Steve to help on that question first, and then I'll fill in.
Of our 9 exchanges, we only have competition on the wireline side in terms of a competitor saying they would resell to date. In 7 of the smallest markets, they don't have any customers. So de facto, we're at.
Anyone else? Mr.
I think when you go back and listen to the testimony here, the question is not can another carrier serve. It's will they serve. And quite frankly, the FCC has many studies that show the carriers will not serve the rural areas. That's why this program existed. In the case of Hawaii, Hawaiian Homelands came to me in the late 80s because the monopoly carrier would not serve areas unless it was economically profitable. And the first areas that we served were homestead areas that homesteaders had been living there for 20 plus years and did not have phone service. I have a letter from a homesteader requesting service from Verizon. And Verizon says in the letter, and this is in 2003, if you pay us $35,000, which is the amount of your share, then we'll consider coming out there.
But you know, Al, they do say in here that the testimony is that you overstate meaning Sandwich Al's importance as a service provider to Hawaiian Homelands, and there's also allegations or statements in here that say that others have said that they have provided it all along. And the reason I'm asking that question is because the fundamental issue, I think, for all of us is that the communities continue to get served. So if there's no chance of that service, then I think that's why the FCC may consider a waiver a certain way, but if they feel that there may be alternatives, it would seem that they would not be considering it as seriously as you personally may wish.
Yes, and that's why I say it's not can they serve. They can serve if they can make money. That's what drives them. But you cannot make money. So what they're not saying is we will serve if we can make money. And
yeah, that goes to another question, which is I think that there's a sense in one of someone else's testimony that it is not a profitable venture to do this. So what do you think is going to be necessary to make this profitable for people to engage in? Steve, you want to start?
I think what we have to be cautious of, and I go back to something Mr. He said, it's whether you can or you may, what's the level of service? Are we have in those same communities, we have a wireless competitor. They're at, without getting too technical, they're at 1900 megahertz, we're at 850. So we have greater range, we have better in building penetration. Where we take in out of the picture, all that village is left with is a by science a lesser, more inferior service, and I don't see that company going in and providing wireline service, which for our rural Native Alaskans, it's a lifeline. You know, if you're having a heart attack, you don't want to have to go outside in a blizzard at 50 below to call 911. You know, you want to be able to do that from inside your home and without in-building penetration. I mean, those are some of the realities of wireless. It's a nice complementary service, but it doesn't substitute when your life is on the line. It doesn't substitute for wireline with you know, a powered line and it's just a different service, a better service in the case of an emergency.
In back in Mescalero, where in the event that something happens that we should shut down, we'd have to refer back to a company that was in there with us in the past, Windstream. I think they're out of Albuquerque. And if that happens and they come back in, I don't know that we would be able to work with them. And just the services and everything, they will not be able to meet what we have, currently. So